The sound of my mother's laughter echoed through the dining room, sharp and dismissive. It was the second Saturday of March, and I was sitting at their kitchen table in Oakville, watching my sister Emma cut into her steak while my parents hung on her every word. "So the promotion came with a corner office," Emma was saying, her voice carrying that particular tone she used when she wanted everyone to know she'd won something. "18th floor. You can see the harbor from both windows." My mother reached over and squeezed Emma's hand. "A corner office at 29. Your father and I are just so proud." I pushed my roasted vegetables around my plate. The carrots were overcooked, soft enough to mash with my fork. "And what about you, sweetie?" My mother turned to me, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Still working at that. What is it again? That charity thing?" "Non-profit," I said quietly. "Community development." My father made a sound somewhere between a cough and a laugh. "Right. Community development. That's what we're calling it these days?" Emma took a sip of her wine. "At least it keeps you busy, Jess. That's what matters." The thing is, I could have corrected them. I could have told them that I'd stopped working at the nonprofit 8 months ago, that I'd been building something of my own since then. But I'd learned, over years of dinners exactly like this one, that sometimes silence was easier than explaining yourself to people who'd already decided what your life looked like. "How much are they paying you at that place?" my father asked, cutting his steak with more force than necessary. "Can't be much. Nonprofits never have any money." "It's enough," I said. "Enough for what?" Emma laughed. "Enough to cover rent in that basement apartment?" I lived in a one-bedroom condo in Liberty Village. I'd bought it 6 months ago. But I didn't say that either. My mother stood up to clear the plates. "Well, at least you're doing something you're passionate about. Even if it doesn't pay well. Not everyone can be a success like Emma." I helped her carry dishes to the kitchen. Through the doorway, I could hear my father asking Emma about her investment portfolio. "Mom," I said quietly, scraping leftover potatoes into the compost bin, "do you ever ask about my work? Like, actually ask?" She looked at me with surprise. "Of course we do, honey. We just asked." "You asked what they pay me." "Well, that's part of it, isn't it? Money matters. You can't just live on good intentions." She patted my shoulder. "When you're older, you'll understand that practicality has to come before passion." I was 27. I'd graduated from Western with honors. I'd worked in the sector for 4 years before I saw the gaps in how community development funding was being distributed, saw how much was being lost to administrative overhead, saw how the people who needed help most were getting the least of it. So I'd built something better. But standing in my mother's kitchen, watching her rinse plates that cost more than most people's monthly grocery budget, I didn't have the energy to explain any of that. 3 weeks later, my phone rang while I was in a meeting. I ignored it. It rang again. And again. When I finally checked during a break, I had 4 missed calls from my father and a text message. "Need to talk. Urgent." I called him back from the hallway outside our boardroom. "Jessica, thank God," he said when he picked up. "I need a favor." "What's wrong?" "Is Mom okay?" "What?" "Yes, she's fine. It's not about that." He cleared his throat. "I need to borrow some money. Just for a couple of weeks. The firm's got a cash flow situation, and I need to cover payroll until a big payment comes through." My father was a senior partner at a consulting firm. He made well into 6 figures. "How much?" I asked. 8,000. "I know it's a lot, but I'm good for it. You know I am. I'll have it back to you by the end of the month." I thought about the conversation at dinner. About how they thought I could barely cover rent. "Dad, if you're having money problems, maybe you should talk to Emma. She just got that promotion." "I can't ask Emma," he said quickly. "She's got her own expenses. That new condo doesn't pay for itself. And besides, you know how she is about money. She'd want to know every detail. But you think I'm desperate enough to say yes without asking questions," I thought. "I can transfer it this afternoon," I said instead. "Really? Jesus, Jess, thank you. You're saving my life here." He hung up before I could change my mind. I sat in that hallway for a long moment, staring at my phone. Then I went back into the meeting where we were finalizing our Series B funding round. $12 million. The investors wanted to talk about scaling to 5 more provinces by the end of the year. The money appeared in my father's account that evening. He texted me a single thumbs-up emoji in response. 4 days later, my mother called. "Jessica, honey, I hate to ask, but I'm in a bit of a bind. I was at my laptop, reviewing the architectural plans for our new Toronto office. 16,000 square feet in the financial district. We'd be moving in by July." "What kind of bind?" I asked. "Well, you know the cottage needs a new dock. We got the quote back, and it's more than we budgeted for. Your father's tied up with this work thing, and I just thought, could you loan us $4,000? Just until the end of summer. We'll pay you back when we sell the boat." They'd been planning to sell the boat for 3 years. "Mom, you just asked Dad to ask me for money last week." That was different. That was for his business. This is for the family cottage, where you're welcome anytime, by the way. You never come up anymore. Because every time I did, I got to hear about how Emma had just bought a new car, or taken a vacation to Portugal, or been featured in some industry magazine. "I'll send it tomorrow," I said. "Oh, you're such a good daughter. Thank you, sweetie. Emma's so busy with work, I didn't want to bother her." After she hung up, I sat very still. My assistant knocked on my office door. "The photographer's here for the team portraits," she said. "Should we start with you?" "Give me 5 minutes," I said. I transferred the money. Then I stood up, straightened my jacket, and went to smile for a camera that would capture an image that would eventually hang in our lobby alongside the rest of the leadership team. May arrived with warm weather and an email from my mother about Sunday dinner. I almost ignored it, but Emma had replied to everyone saying she'd be there and was bringing her new boyfriend, and something about that made me say yes. I showed up in jeans and a sweater. Emma arrived in a dress that probably cost what I used to make in a month at the nonprofit. Her boyfriend, Marcus, was tall and worked in private equity. He shook my father's hand with the kind of confidence that comes from never having to prove yourself. We sat in the backyard this time. My mother had made salmon on the barbecue. The evening was warm enough that we didn't need jackets. "So, Marcus," my father said, pouring wine, "Emma tells us you're closing a pretty big deal right now." "Hopefully," Marcus said with a modest smile. "Can't talk about the details yet, but if it goes through, it'll be a good year." That's what I like to hear. Smart young man with ambition. My father looked at me. "You could learn something from that, Jess. Ambition." I took a sip of water. "I have ambition." Sure. But there's a difference between wanting to help people and wanting to succeed. You've always been so focused on making the world better that you forget to make your own life better. Emma touched Marcus's arm. "Jess works for a charity. She's very dedicated." "Nonprofit," I corrected automatically. "Same thing, isn't it?" Emma said. "Actually, I don't work there anymore." Everyone looked at me. "Since when?" my mother asked. 8 months ago. 8 months? My father put down his wine glass. "And you didn't think to mention it? Where are you working now?" "I started my own company." The silence that followed was thick enough to cut. "Your own company," my father repeated slowly. "Doing what, exactly?" "Community development funding platform. We connect donors directly to verified community projects, cut out the administrative overhead, provide transparency on fund allocation. We launched in Ontario, and we're expanding across Canada." Emma laughed. Not meanly, but like I'd said something cute and naive. "Jess, that's sweet, but starting a company costs money. Real money. How are you even funding that?" "Investors. Investors." My father said it like I'd claimed to have a pet unicorn. "What investors are putting money into community charity work?" "Venture capital." We closed our Series B in April. 12 million. Marcus choked on his wine. My mother's fork clattered against her plate. $12 million? Emma's voice had gone very quiet. "Yes. That's not possible. Dad, she's joking, right?" I pulled out my phone, found the press release that had run in BetaKit and the Globe and Mail, and held it up. My father took the phone, his hand not quite steady. Cornerstone Development Solutions, he read aloud. Jessica Chen, founder and CEO, announced today. He looked up at me. Really looked at me. Maybe for the first time in years. You're the founder. Yes. And CEO. Yes. My mother made a sound like she couldn't quite catch her breath. But you said you worked at a nonprofit. You said it didn't pay well. I worked at a nonprofit 4 years ago. It did pay well, actually, but I left to build something better. Why didn't you tell us? Emma's voice had an edge to it now. I tried. Multiple times. At Christmas, I mentioned I was working on a new project. Dad asked if I was still doing that volunteer thing. At Easter, I said I was in the middle of raising capital. Mom asked if I needed money for rent. The silence stretched out. You let us think you were struggling, my father said finally. No. You decided I was struggling and stopped listening to anything that contradicted that story. Emma pushed back from the table. This is bullshit. You're telling me you've been secretly running a multi-million-dollar company and just, what, pretending to be poor? I wasn't pretending anything. I was living my life. You were all too busy deciding what my life looked like to notice what it actually was. That's not fair, my mother said, her voice wavering. We're your family. We care about you. You asked me for $12,000 in a month, while thinking I could barely afford to live. What was the plan there? Were you hoping I'd go into debt for you? Were you testing whether I cared enough to destroy my own finances? My father's face had gone red. Now hold on. That's completely different. We needed help and you're our daughter. Family helps family. But you didn't ask Emma. Because Emma's successful, and you couldn't ask her to help with something as small as a cash flow problem or a dock repair. You could only ask me, because you'd decided I was the failure. Nobody said you were a failure, my mother whispered. You didn't have to say it. Marcus cleared his throat. Maybe we should give you all some privacy. No, stay, Emma said sharply. Then, to me, how much are you worth? That's not relevant. How much? My equity in the company is currently valued at around $18 million. Personally, I'm comfortable. Emma stood up so fast her chair tipped over. Unbelievable. This is absolutely unbelievable. Sit down, my father started. No, she's been lying to us for months. I haven't lied about anything. You all made assumptions, and I stopped correcting them because it was exhausting and pointless. Pointless? My mother's voice broke. Telling your family about your success is pointless? When that family has spent years making it clear they think you're incapable of success? Yes, I stood up. Thank you for dinner. I need to go. Jessica, wait. My father reached for my arm. We need to talk about this. We really don't. I walked through their house, past the photos on the walls. Most of them were of Emma. Emma, graduating. Emma, at her first job. Emma with awards and achievements and that smile that said she'd never doubted she was the favorite. There was one photo of me, from high school graduation. I was standing slightly apart from everyone else, like I already knew I didn't quite fit. I drove home in silence. My phone started ringing before I'd made it out of Oakville. I didn't answer. The messages started coming through around midnight. Dad, we need to talk about this properly. Come by tomorrow. Mom, I don't understand why you're so angry. We've always supported you. Emma, you made us all look like idiots in front of Marcus. Thanks for that. I turned my phone off and went to bed. Sunday morning arrived with weak sunlight through my bedroom curtains. I made coffee and tried to convince myself I felt relieved. Mostly, I just felt tired. My phone, when I finally turned it back on, showed 17 missed calls and 34 text messages. Most were from my parents. Variations on the same theme. We didn't mean it that way. You're being too sensitive. Family forgives each other. But there was one from my sister that was different. Emma, I've been thinking about what you said, and you're right. I knew they treated you differently. I knew and I never said anything because it made my life easier. I'm sorry. That's fucked up. Can we talk? I stared at that message for a long time. Then I saw the last one, sent at 3 in the morning. Emma. Also, for what it's worth, I'm proud of you. I should have said that years ago. I called her. She picked up on the first ring. Jess. Hey. I'm sorry, she said immediately. For all of it. For last night. For every dinner before that. Why didn't you ever say anything? She was quiet for a moment. Because it was comfortable. Being the golden child is really comfortable. And I told myself it wasn't that bad, that you didn't care, that it was just how Mom and Dad were. But I knew. I always knew. Yeah. For what it's worth? Marcus was horrified. He spent an hour last night telling me my family's dynamic is toxic as hell. Smart guy. He really is. She paused. Can I ask you something? Sure. When Dad asked you for that money, when you knew they thought you were barely getting by, why did you still send it? I looked out my window at the Toronto skyline. Because I wanted to believe they'd figure it out. That they'd realize I wouldn't have that kind of money if I was actually struggling. That maybe it would make them curious enough to actually ask about my life. Instead, they just took it and didn't think twice. Yeah. Jesus. Emma exhaled. We're a mess, aren't we? Your family of origin doesn't have to be your family of choice. Did you read that somewhere? Therapy. Good therapy? The best. We talked for another hour. It didn't fix everything. But it was something. Monday morning, I had a meeting with our legal team about the expansion into Alberta. Tuesday was the interview with Forbes about women-led startups in the social impact space. Wednesday, we signed the lease on the new office. Thursday afternoon, my father called. Jessica. I've been trying to reach you. I've been busy. Right, of course. With the company. He said it carefully, like he was testing out a new language. I wanted to apologize for the things I said, for how we've treated you. I waited. Your mother and I, we didn't realize. We thought we were being supportive. You thought you were being realistic. There's a difference. Maybe. Probably. He cleared his throat. The thing is, we're proud of you. We are. We just didn't know how to show it because we didn't know what you were doing. Because you never asked. You're right, we didn't. A pause. Can we start over? Can we try this again? I don't know. Fair enough. He sounded tired. For what it's worth, I looked up your company. Read all the articles. You've built something incredible. Something that actually matters. Your old man's impressed. Something in my chest loosened, just slightly. Thanks. Will you come to dinner this Sunday? No pressure. Just, if you want to. We'd like to hear about it. Really hear about it. I'll think about it. That's all I can ask. After we hung up, I sat in my office for a while. Through the window, I could see construction crews working on the building across the street. Building something from nothing. One floor at a time. My assistant knocked. The photographer from the Financial Post is here for your profile shoot. Give me 5 minutes. I opened my laptop and pulled up my calendar. Sunday dinner was blocked off as free time. I moved it to maybe. That felt about right. The thing about being underestimated is that it teaches you something valuable. It teaches you that you don't need anyone's permission to succeed. You don't need their belief or their approval or their validation. You just need your own. But the thing about being underestimated by your family is that it leaves a specific kind of mark. Even when you prove them wrong, even when you build something undeniable, there's still this part of you that's sitting at that dinner table, quietly pushing overcooked vegetables around your plate, wondering if they'll ever really see you. The answer, I've learned, is complicated. People can change, relationships can heal, but they have to want to. And wanting to means more than apologizing. It means listening. It means acknowledging what they didn't see, what they didn't hear, what they chose to ignore. It means understanding that their version of your life was never your reality, and being willing to let you tell them what that reality actually is. Sunday came. I went to dinner. My mother opened the door, and her eyes were red like she'd been crying. Jessica, come in. The dining room table was set carefully. There were flowers in a vase. My father stood when I walked in, which he'd never done before. Emma was already there. She caught my eye, and gave me a small nod. We sat down to dinner. For the first few minutes, no one seemed to know what to say. Then my father cleared his throat. "Tell us about the company. From the beginning. We want to understand." So I did. I told them about working at the nonprofit and seeing how much money disappeared into overhead costs, about realizing that donors wanted transparency but existing systems couldn't provide it, about spending 6 months building a prototype in my apartment while still working full-time, about the first investor who believed in the idea, about the night we processed our first $1 million in donations and I sat in my living room and cried because it had actually worked. My mother listened with her hand over her mouth. My father asked questions that actually made sense, that showed he was trying to understand. When I finished, there was a long silence. "I'm sorry," my mother said finally, "that we weren't there for any of that, that you felt like you couldn't tell us." "I didn't feel like I couldn't tell you. I tried to tell you. You weren't listening." "You're right," my father said. "We weren't. We'd decided what your life was and we never checked if we were right." Emma spoke up. "I think we all did that, including me, and I'm sorry too. The thing is," I said carefully, "I don't need you to be impressed. I don't need you to finally think I'm successful. I need you to respect me enough to listen when I talk, to trust that I know what I'm doing with my life, even if it doesn't look like what you expected." "That's fair," my father said. "That's more than fair." We ate dinner. It wasn't magically fixed. There were still awkward silences. My mother still made a comment about how I should settle down with someone before it was too late, and I still had to bite my tongue. But when I left, my father hugged me and said, "I really am proud of you. I should have said it sooner." And for the first time in years, I believed him. 2 months later, we opened the new office. The lobby was exactly what I'd envisioned. Floor-to-ceiling windows, clean lines, a feature wall with our mission statement in letters 3 feet high. My parents came to the opening event. Emma came with Marcus. They walked through the space with something like awe on their faces. "This is yours," my mother whispered, looking up at the wall where my name was listed as founder and CEO. "You built this." "I did. I wish I'd known. I wish I'd been able to help." "You can help now. Tell people about what we do. Share our work. That's all I need." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "I will. I promise." My father stood in the lobby for a long time, just looking around. Finally, he turned to me. "When I asked you for that money," he said quietly, "you could have told me no. You could have told me the truth. Why didn't you?" "Because I hoped you'd figure it out. I hoped it would make you curious enough to actually ask about my life. But we didn't." "No, you didn't." He nodded slowly. "I'm going to do better. I can't undo the past, but I can do better now. That's all anyone can do." The event was a success. We had coverage in 3 major publications. The board was happy. The investors were happy. My team was happy. But the thing that surprised me most was that I was happy too. Not because my family had finally seen what I'd built, but because I'd built it anyway. Because their disbelief hadn't stopped me. Because I'd learned that the only validation I really needed was my own. That night, I stood in my condo and looked out at the city lights. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Dinner next week? Just us? I want to hear about everything I missed." I smiled and typed back, "Yeah, I'd like that." Change doesn't happen all at once. Healing isn't linear. Families are complicated, messy, imperfect things. But sometimes, if everyone's willing to try, they can be better. Sometimes, what I learned through all of this is that you can't make people see you. You can't force them to value you or respect you or believe in you. All you can do is build the life you want, with or without their approval. And if they eventually come around, if they eventually open their eyes and really look at what you've created, that's a bonus. It's nice. It can even be healing. But it can't be the thing you're building for. Because the only person who needs to believe in you is you. The only validation that matters is the validation you give yourself. And the only life you need to live up to is your own. Everything else is just noise.